this video, we're going to show you a quick overview of how Virtuoso, a codeless test automation platform for functional UI integration and end-to-end testing, can be used in the legal industry. For example, for testing, whether it's CRM systems or legal applications that are used to go through different workflows, which could be to create legal documents, track legal document processes, but even look at legal documents themselves. So Virtuoso uses natural language to be able to create automated tests. So anybody can come in, and if they see on screen, for example, there is a tasks menu item they want to be able to click on, then they simply come in and say click on task to create their automated test step. So in this way, people can go through and they can firstly put in a navigation step, which fires up a browser, a live browser window, to then look at the screen and see what they want to be able to interact with in the actions using some predefined syntax. So for example, clicking or writing, we could do picking from drop downs, but also how you can factor in, because this is test automation, things like assertions to validate, let's say, that certain document names have been saved or statuses have been achieved. So in this way, you can come through and write the tests and create what we call journeys, broken down into checkpoints, the individual segments like logging in, creating tasks, opening the task and entering it, checking off subtasks, but then also being able to do things like upload and download PDF documents. Of course, in the legal industry, having documentation and being able to assert that that documentation is created correctly is incredibly important. Now, through the test, of course, because you're going to be entering in data, which could be in this case simply a company name, but then you could have things like first names, last names, different legal documents, for example, then there are a few ways to do this. Of course, you can write values into the UI directly. So here we've got the username being written into an username field. But then we can do things like we can have parameterized data. And this can come from a number of different sources. So it could come from generating random data. In this case, we're generating a random company name, which is realistic. We could have test data sets, which in this case, you can upload CSV files or create directly tables of data, which could be parameterized data with all the different data scenarios, which then you could run and test from different scenarios. But then you can also use API calls. So you could be calling, for example, an endpoint into a system to go and get details of existing legal documents, store them into a response, and then use that response data to be able to then go and pick up the documents. Or indeed, you could use the API calls to test that if there's integrations between different systems, you could validate by way of the API calls that the data has indeed been integrated at the end of the user flow. So to give an idea of how this actually works, if I begin a new journey from a certain point, so we'll call this our journey 2, which is created within our goal, our test set, you see that we navigate to the URL, so we have the browser window automatically opened. Then, for example, we could do the login steps as a simple one. So what we're going to do, we're going to come in and say, if I write my username and then look at the screen and I can see it has email in the box, I can write my email address into the email. And upon doing that, Virtuoso automatically runs the step. We see that it's been populated in the field that we wanted, but also we're capturing screenshots for before and after interactions. So what we're going to do now is write the password. And what I've done, I've stored the password at the environment level. So we'll see that you can create environments. And in this case, what I've done is set my legal password and I put it in, but also marked it as sensitive so nobody else can see that. So I could put my legal password into the password field. And again, upon doing that, it automatically goes ahead and runs that step. And then I could just say, click on login, for example. So we call this live authoring, where as I'm writing my steps, it's then going ahead and performing the action. In this case, it logs in and starts my flow. So what this means is that pretty much anybody can come in and start building this. But what is actually happening is when the tests are running, is Virtuoso is looking at the DOM level to discover all the element selectors, so XPath, IDs, class names, and so on. So that what this means as well is that every time the tests are run, which we can execute this, but we can also do the same from execution plans. So you can schedule to run your tests at certain times. You can run it from CI/CD as well. But when we do run this, if I go and execute this, we can look in our project activity and we can see that as the test is running, it's running in real time. You can see the time that it's running for. Note there are no wait times in here, so we have autonomous waits. We're actually waiting for network traffic to progress to be able to run through the test steps. And again, we're capturing screenshots for the before and after interactions for every execution that runs. So I'm going to let this one run through to the end. And as you can see, this is now finished. And notice past of this, we had functional steps, but we also uploaded a document into the upload portion of the UI. But then what we can do is we could actually download that file. So we can click on the download link, which actually downloads the file to Virtuoso. And then we could show that PDF on screen. So we can actually see it, and then we can assert against that to check for values. So where you've gone ahead and created documentation in the UI that contains certain information, then you could store that data and then look for it to check that the PDF actually matches what was presented in the UI. And then of course we've got the API call that's being made at the end as well, which could be to check the API or use API data. Now what we're also doing when the tests are running on every execution is we're going through and checking to see if there are element changes. For instance, it could be because there are, for instance, class names are changing. It could be dynamic IDs, XPaths. It could be labels changing on screen, but for elements that otherwise stay the same. We're using machine learning algorithms to be able to confidently identify that it's still the same element, but that because there are changes, it should be automatically healed. This is reducing down the burden of test maintenance to ensure that the tests keep running without you having to fix them. But in addition, as you can see here, alongside readable steps with screenshots, we've then got, if there's a bug or an issue, you can see the failure point. You can look at the root cause analysis to get an idea of things like the page source, page network, and console logs to be able to start to debug, for instance, if there are particular issues or errors, get those fixed, re-released and retested, and get on with your releases. So this has just been a short overview of how Virtuoso's codeless test automation platform for any browser-based application can also be used in the legal industry for testing across business processes and flows within legal applications.